What are carbon-based fertilizers? When most people hear the word fertilizer, usually two things come to mind: organic fertilizer and conventional fertilizer. Here at Rooted Leaf Agritech, we are pioneering a new approach to plant fertility: carbon-based fertilizers. We are one of the first and only companies in the world bringing this exciting new technology into existence. Understanding the hows and whys doesn't have to be complicated if we stick to the basics. Firstly, carbon is the most important macronutrient for crops. The acquisition of carbon defines what plant life is all about. Plants use the power of the sun to generate the energy needed to suck carbon out of the air and reshape it into hundreds of thousands of different distinct molecules. Carbon is anything and everything to a plant: the zest of orange peels, the hues of lavender buds, the sweetness of stevia leaves, the fibers within artichoke hearts. If it's something that plants make, then it's going to have carbon in it. A lot of carbon. In fact, all plants on Earth are made of more carbon than any other element. Conventional wisdom has led us to believe that the most important fertilizer ingredients are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and other micronutrients. So it's no wonder that conventional fertilizers contain just those elements, with very little to no carbon. This is not exactly how plants work. In fact, you could count up all of those elements, combine them together, multiply that number by 5, and the plant would still have more carbon in it. That's how massively important this one element is. The exclusion of carbon from conventional fertilizers creates a problem that eventually leads to globally catastrophic effects we can no longer ignore and must deal with immediately. The effects are everywhere, at every scale, from the nitrate and phosphate runoff that is visible from space to the obliteration of microscopic bacteria and fungi that are vital components of healthy soils. The big problem, more specifically, is that the use of conventional fertilizers creates an imbalance in the delicate thermodynamic equilibrium. This imbalance is impossible to overcome and only becomes more extreme as conventional fertilizers are applied on larger and larger scales. So what is this equilibrium? The leaves of plants are like giant solar panels that capture light energy from the sun and generate something known as reduction power. Think of it like money in a bank account. As plants continue to take in light energy, their bank account continues to fill up with reduction power, and plants can spend it to acquire the various elements coming up from the roots and in through the leaves. The acquisition of these elements, such as carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and others, requires plants to spend their reduction power, much like the acquisition of bread, cheese, meat, and other ingredients for a sandwich costs money at the grocery store. Plants want to spend most of their reduction power on carbon, but the application of conventional fertilizers depletes their bank accounts by placing a demand on plants to spend that hard-earned reduction power on salts like nitrates, phosphates, sulfates, and so on, even though they are not required in nearly the quantities as carbon is. The more we apply, the more we deplete the bank accounts of plants, microbes, and even the soil itself, until everything is taxed to death, and all of the carbon, which was once in the soil, is now back in the air in the form of CO2. This is extremely dangerous because when plants become deficient in carbon, yields plummet, quality diminishes, and the ability of crops to resist disease pressures is reduced to zero. Millions of acres of farmland around the world have been lost in this way, and it's estimated that up to 50% of crop yields globally are lost in similar ways. Here's where Rooted Leaf Agritech comes in. Our revolutionary technology is the first and only to reverse this thermodynamic equilibrium. Plants do not deplete their bank accounts in order to access our carbon-based nutrients. They actually experience a net gain in available reduction power. Every time you feed your plants with Rooted Leaf Agritech's carbon-based nutrients, you are making a direct deposit into their bank accounts. With additional reduction power, plants have more energy available to deal with stressors that typically tax them and eventually deplete their savings. And it's not just the plants that experience the benefits. Our carbon-based technology also reverses thermodynamic equilibriums in soils, which helps feed the hundreds of billions of microorganisms that depend on the transfer of carbon from above ground to underground, where it is the most valuable element for all life. Reversing the flow of reduction power across all of these biological systems means our technology constantly supplies resources to plants that can help significantly increase yields, improve nutrient density, and protect the integrity of soils for future generations of plants, people, and this planet. The future of agriculture is Rooted Leaf Agritech.